All right, everyone. Thanks for joining in. We're going to go ahead and get started up here. There'll be a few more, I'm sure, joining in a little bit here, but we got some housekeeping to take care of at the beginning, so not really a big deal. Well, first off, welcome to GTRI Security Bootcamp for Cisco. Splunk, not Cisco. But again, thank you, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, where you might be in the world. Thank you for joining us today. When you joined, you should have seen a transfer window that'll have all the files that are pertaining to this bootcamp today. You'll see a lab sign-up page. You'll see your name to log into our web server, as well as the rest of the course material for today, and I'll let our presenter talk a little bit more about that today. So go ahead and download those once you see them. So welcome on behalf of GTRI, myself, Taylor Williams, and Scott Anderson, who is your host today. Welcome to our boot camp. I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction of both myself and Scott. I am, like I said, Taylor Williams. I'm a sales engineer here with GTRI, and I am a Splunk certified architect as well. I've been working with the software for probably about 18 months now, and I absolutely love it at this point. Done quite a few deliveries for GTRI at this point, and I'm going to keep going down that way. Scott Anderson, who is going to be your host today, he is also one of our Splunk architects, and he actually comes from us from a Fortune 5 bank where he managed over 10 terabytes of Splunk daily indexing licensing by himself. So he will be the one giving your presentation today, and I will actually be what we call hosting this presentation, where I will be the one that gets to answer your questions that you guys might have during the presentation, so Scott can focus on giving it to you guys. So to that note, if you do have questions during the presentation, if you could go ahead and put them in the chat box and direct them to all panelists, then I will be answering them during the presentation so Scott can continue on with the presentation and I can get you your answers answered quickly there. So I think that about covers a quick introduction from me, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Scott for the rest of the presentation here. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Taylor. Make sure that I'm still being heard. Yeah, there we go. My name is Scott Anderson, and I will actually be presenting today. Taylor, thank you for the introduction. Like Taylor said, he's also a certified architect, so you're well handled on the line if you have questions. So again, with the questions, we have a lot of material to pack in here, and we don't want to necessarily interrupt a lot of lecture time in order to answer questions, although your questions are important, and we'd love to answer them. It's just a matter of practicality on that front. Again, as Taylor said, there's material that you can download. There's actually the slides for this course, and there's also the lab materials. We'll actually be doing a bit of lab work in the course of the next 2 hours or so. So we have, I think, 3 or 4 labs that we're actually going to spend some time doing. So the format will be that we will kind of pause, take a break, and let you guys work on those. So the line will go silent a little ways through. So if you have to in and out, have to come back in the line of silence, probably because we're doing a lab. So that's one of the big things about these boot camps that we think is very valuable, that we have an environment out there that is running with data being collected and have enterprise security installed there, and so you can kind of play around with the app as well. We'll get into the actual connection to that here in just a little bit, but we'll do a little bit of intro stuff first. As far as audio goes, just want to make sure that people, if it becomes a problem, then we're getting a lot of noise and things, I will have to mute people's lines, and so we'll just kind of manage that as we go. So hopefully we're all virtual professionals here and know kind of how to manage our mute buttons and deal with some of that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because I never have enough time. I always have too much to say. So let me go ahead and share out my screen, and we'll go over to the slides. I have to put on my marketing hat first. This is a free webinar, but that means you have to pay the price of listening to a little bit of marketing. I'm not a sales guy. I'm more of a delivery guy. So I actually go on site. I actually teach some of Splunk's training courses as well. So I've been doing this for quite some time. Taylor did mention the bank that I work for. Yeah, it was actually, when I left it was 12 terabytes, but it was actually going up, only going larger from there. So it was a pretty good size implementation. I did have a team that worked on it, though. It wasn't just me. So there's a couple others involved with that as well. let's see. Other than that, I work professional services. I do training and been with GTRI for a couple of years now. And note that we are GTRI. We are not Splunk. And so I did note that we potentially have an actual Splunk email address listed. So we may have actually a true professional Splunker here. But we are not Splunk itself. So we have a little different spin on it. But hopefully we all have the same consistent message. We're sold on Splunk. We like the product. We think it has good value, and otherwise we wouldn't be giving the boot camps. So a little bit about GTRI. First of all, we're ISO certified. So if you're a government agency, we're one of the companies that you can deal with very easily. So we have all. I'm not going to read this slide back to you just because there's a lot of words on it. But we're proud of our certification, and we'd like to be able to help people in the government space as well, both federal and in the commercial side. As far as GTRI goes, who are we? What do we do? We're partners with a lot of hardware vendors. We deal with a lot of Cisco products. We are gold partners, or I forget which one to say which. We're an elite Splunk partner, one of the first elite Splunk partners. We're also a Cisco Master Security partner. We're a VMware partner. So we sell hardware. We also sell Splunk. We sell Splunk licensing, Splunk professional services, and Splunk training. So if you have any needs along those lines, we'd be happy to be able to help you there. So we're also actually a Splunk training center, which is there aren't too many of those in the United States right now. All right. A little bit of an overview of us. These stats are continually changing, so I know we just got a couple more people certified architects just the other day, so I'm not sure what this snapshot was, but the last I knew, we had about 60 Splunk certifications, 5 architects, 5 certified solution engineers. We're a training center, and so we're one of the first elite partners with Splunk, and so we're hoping to be your one-stop shop, if you can, for all your Splunk needs as far as that goes. Again, a couple of numbers about the different Splunk functionality we have. Again, I mentioned this. We have licensing, professional services, training, and we have also unique partnerships with Cisco, VMware, Citrix, NetApp, those type of vendors, along with the Splunk expertise to try to help pull them in. So again, we are not Splunk, but we are partners. So where are we at as far as common ground? We're going to be talking not necessarily on an introductory level. It's assumed that people online have some of the basics of the Splunk architecture and kind of know a little bit about the searching command, a little bit about the interface of how to go through some of the data gathering techniques in Splunk. We actually have another boot camp that's called Splunk for Operational Efficiency. That actually assumes a start from zero, so you might want to pick that up if you get a little confused with some of the things we're zipping through today. But you don't need to panic, because it says on the bottom, you don't actually have that background. You'll still see kind of what's going on and be able to walk through some of the things. The labs are reasonably detailed. You can probably figure your way through those and play with things. And you can always come back and sign up for another boot camp later if you'd like to get a little more experience under your belt and then listen to it again. It's always an option. It's also helpful to kind of understand a little bit of your data sources, some of your firewalls, some of your security logs, and things like that, because we're not really going to talk to that at all. You can see at the bottom, there's a couple of these taglines. Just see the forest and the trees. These are actually messages that come up when you start the Splunk executable on the Linux, Unix platforms, and they're kind of clever. So we go ahead and steal them a little bit and put them at the bottom of our slides. So that's where this came from, if you're wondering. So our goals today: answer the question, why use Splunk for security? A look at how you can use Splunk for security use cases using not only core Splunk, but actually using the enterprise security product as well. So so you can get a lot of value out of security value out of Splunk by just using core Splunk, and so we'll go through and kind of look at that as well. And we're going to give you a little hands-on experience with a lab that you can log into as well. All right, a couple of the topics we're going to hit, and then let's just get rolling here a bit. So actually, there's lab access. Let me bring up real quickly. You should have been able to get to the downloads, and one of the downloads that is available out there is actually user logins. And let me bring up the user login screen, put it over where you can see it over here. So generally speaking, it's got a link to our server. So note that it is HTTPS, and then it has everybody's username, the username and the username and the email that you registered with. So these all should be alphabetical. So you should be able to log in and then use a particular login. In this case, it would be student 1 and then GTR1 and it's case sensitive. So capital G TR1 and then STU1, and the STU is a 1 through the number all the way down. There's no real magic about that. We like to have everyone log in as a different user, so you have your own space to play with. Stomp on each other's work or searches and get real confused about what's going on because someone else is modifying something underneath you. So so each person will have their own login to go and look at. Note again the URL ends with HTTPS, and the other note up here at the top of our other document is you'll get the certification warning because we spin these up and we don't put the appropriate certs on there necessarily, so you will get that warning and have to navigate through that, which is kind of ironic for a security boot camp, but it's all a matter of level of effort and maintenance. So you'll have to navigate your way through that. All right, we will have our first lab will actually be to try to get people connected. So the first part of it will be you can jump on ahead of time. You can work the labs ahead. I don't really care. It's whatever lends value to you. And so this is all about just you being able to get into some of the security stuff and understand kind of how it works. So advanced threats in the headlines lately. The latest one would be the Sony hack that came through. We're all pretty familiar with about that. But it was an interesting quote I got from that. It was actually in the Wall Street Journal, I think. That we know people who do penetration testing for a living, real no-holds-barred attacks that mimics a full-on assault by a dogged expert attacker, and we know that they always get in. So it's one of those things that security is difficult, and so you don't have to you don't only have to guard the front door, you have to be patrolling the halls to see who's already in. So there's that aspect of it. A couple other things. Iran cyber attacks are called out here, and a couple of insider threats. Some of the biggest use cases are from insiders. Your security may be just great, but if someone gives away the keys to the castle, someone will still get in. So security is not an easy topic to address, and you have to kind of take a different approach to some of it. Traditionally, a lot of people have approached security by saying, well, we'll just guard the door and make sure that nobody gets in. And while that is a good thing to do, and you should be doing it, you should be guarding the door as best you can, it only takes one compromise to get through the door. So you know, not only do you have to guard the door, but like I said earlier, you probably need to monitor the halls as well, just to see what people are doing once they're in there. Because first of all, it might be an insider type attack that it may be someone that actually has valid credentials to get in that's doing malicious things or not where they need to be. Or it just, like I say, takes one compromise to get into your system and cause all sorts of problems. And you just are not probably, most likely, you can be very good, but most likely someone's going to find a way in at some point. Some sort of vulnerability is going to allow them in, so you definitely need to take a multi-pronged approach. The prevention eventually fails, as the Richard Batelich basically quoted that. You can be as good as you want, and the better you are, the better off you are. But you you can't assume that you're completely clean as far as that goes. The threat is real. You're compromised. You just don't know it. That's what Gartner had said. So a little bit of a bleak outlook, but it kind of reflects the reality of things in security these days. A couple more stats on that front. From a Mandiant report in 2012 and 13, the threats that they looked at, 100% of them actually used valid credentials to get in. So just passwords were not, it wasn't as though they worked around it. They actually went through the front door by managing to compromise somebody's password or by getting a password that was compromised. The other thing is the average number of systems accessed for 40. It was 243 days before they actually detected that they were compromised, which is a significant amount of time. So we need to look at ways of making that faster and coming up with that better. The key one here, though, the scary one here, is 63% of the victims were notified by an external entity. When we're talking about the external entity, we're talking about something like the FBI or something through the press, and you definitely want to be able to catch those type of things before they're on the public side. So if you can manage to understand it and control it internally, that is the best way to go, because then the information is in your control and you're able to work with it, as opposed to working with an external entity that may or may not publish results and publish your data in the case of Sony, that publish your movies. All right. So security in general has been thought of as having, for a traditional SIEM, traditional security application, it thinks of security from a firewall, authentication, vulnerability, intrusion detection, data loss, and malware perspective. So they have all of that information they're gathering together. When it comes down to it, that really is only a subset of the information that is available in order for you to do correlation searches and for enable you to look at the state of the system. So Splunk takes the approach that all data is security relevant, which makes it to a big data solution. So rather than just these 6 general areas of security information, we've got the whole gambit of security information. We've got all your databases, emails. The problem with traditional SIEMs, in a sense, or one of the limitations, I should say, with a traditional SIEM, is that a lot of times they will pull up that subset of data, and if the information surrounding the compromise is not reflected inside of that information, inside of that subset of information, there's no way to find it. And in this case, you might have people badging in, badging out, and so that's a piece of information you can use and say, hey, this guy's accessing things from within our building, and he's not in our building. And so that's a security concern. Traditional SIEM would not have that piece of information. Now they're getting better, and you can always collect different things, but they typically take your information, they pull out the pieces that they want to look at, and then they put them in a database, and then they query them. And then if they want to increase what they're looking at, first off, they have to re-release the product, because you have to change the schema on all your database tables to add a new column to it. It's not retroactive in the sense that you weren't collecting the data or storing the data before then, so you can't go back in time and look at things that happened before you were actually had that upgrade to the SIEM. And with Splunk, these are not concerns, because if you collect all the data, then you can always go back and look at new things with the data. Splunk is designed to pick up big data. It's designed to search through a lot of data and be able to handle that volume. And having all that information, you can always go back and pull up new pieces of information as they become relevant and as they need to be pulled in for the search. So that's one of the big advantages to using Splunk for looking at security type data. All right. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and have you take a couple of minutes to go in and log into Splunk. Change your password and time zone, so another one of the documents that you should have been able to download is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go back to my other slides. There we go. Stop sharing. All right, put this back at this page over here. Would be the lab documents. So there are 2 forms of the lab documents. The one I'm publishing now is the one that has the, quote, answers by it. So in this case, you'll see not only the text here, but eventually if I go down a little further, you can see some solutions of things that you can, nice color it chose for me this time, a little pink. Some solutions for each of the questions. So you can look at either one of them. It may be easier to look at the answers one, but if you want more of the challenge of going through without the answers, there's that version of it as well. So in this case, we've got 10 to 15 minutes to do the lab. So I'm going to go ahead and give you that time. It's about 22 past the hour, 20, yeah. So 10 to 15 minutes, 32, we'll go 35 after. And so I'm going to just let the line go silent here for a bit. And we're going to start up at 35 after. Notate that. Start back. I can't type, can I? 35 past the hour. And meantime, I'm going to try to answer questions or what in the chat. I saw a couple of things come through while I was talking, so I'll see what I can do on that front. So we're going to start back up at 35 after. I'm going to let the line go silent, and you can play and let me know if you're having problems downloading things, or let Taylor know, and we'll get you set up. If you have connectivity problems, we'll try to work through some of those as well. So I will talk to you again at 35 after. I got one question from someone that asked, is the URL up? Yes, the URL is up. Sometimes if you're at a location, they will you may have a firewall on your way and you won't be able to get to our lab environment. The lab is actually out on AWS Web Services out there, so you should. It's pretty much open to connectivity from the AWS side. But if you're a corporation, if you're on a company network that has a firewall in the way that doesn't allow traffic out, there's not much we can do to help with that. The suggestion I would have if you're having trouble connecting to that URL would be possibly to get on a network outside of your company if that's a valid thing to do. So hopefully that's a solution you can do. But if you have a firewall blocking you, that's kind of out of my control. So hopefully you can get to a network that can get there. All right, as people start finishing that up, I'm going to go ahead and set up to continue on. I apologize for the flashing that happens when I share my screen out, so hopefully that won't be too distracting for you guys. So that's where we were. And so just wanted to talk a little bit about the lab server while people are finishing up. The lab server out there is on AWS, and we spin it up for these boot camps, but it will be open out there and available until later tonight, probably about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock Eastern Coast time. So you should be able to play with it more after we finish talking, or you play with it after work as well. And depending on what time zone you're in, you'll have more time after work. But it should be out there and available to play with. So we're not going to tear it down just immediately. One of the big things that we think is a value for this boot camp is that that you have a server out there that you can kind of play around with. Splunk is really easy to install on your own laptop or on your own system, but it's a little harder to get all the data in that you want, and to get something like enterprise security out there and installed on there can be reasonably difficult. So this gives you a chance to kind of play around with it and kind of let you see what it does. I would say that all the data coming in is actually generated by various Python code out there. So if you start looking at the traffic too closely, it'll fall apart as far as making sense. So I don't want to advertise that this is a real thorough treatment of what data should look like on a lot of sense, but we are collecting data. Splunk is picking it up, but it is done by data gen, so don't be too critical of exactly what it looks like, because some of the randomization makes some interesting patterns that just don't look like they're real, because they aren't. So anyway. All right, hopefully you're able to get out there and create a dashboard and get that first search on there. We're going to build that dashboard up a little bit going forward, and then at the end we're going to look at take a tour of enterprise security as well. So the dashboard is actually core Splunk, whereas enterprise security we'll look at its interface towards the end of the session. All right, Splunk is being used for security in a lot of areas. There's 5 main security use cases that we're dealing with. Just look at forensics, look at something that happened in a particular incident, and kind of drill into the data there. There's a lot of people that use it for security and compliance, and so it's a use case that's being used there in a lot of. One of the use cases I had with a Fortune 5 bank is that we had to fill all the compliance buckets, and honestly, one of the big buckets it was filling was just the visibility of the logs, aggregating them all in one spot. So there's so many instances, so many things running in so many data centers that you look at the log file was actually an aggregation of over 100 different files, and to look through it was problematic. So that was one of the compliance use cases that we were dealing with there. Real-time monitoring of known threats, so you can actually set up alerts and of things that you know could happen. I know I was at a client the other day that wanted a custom thing to say, we have a particular problem with malware putting executables on our C drive. And I want to know how many machines out there have executables on their C drive right at the root level, because there shouldn't be any out there. And you can write a script out there that just looks for the directories and pulls them back in and gives them a report. And there were hundreds. It wasn't pretty on that front, but now they know. One of the taglines that Splunk uses is that you can see your data, maybe wish you couldn't, wish you hadn't. So, but it's better to know what's there than to just go out blindly. Real-time monitoring of unknown threats. That's a little more vague type of concept. The idea is that you're collecting all the data, so things that you don't know are happening yet, you're actually picking it up, and that's a difference that a lot of SIEMs don't do. They have their set of things they look at, and they update them periodically, and they do a pretty good job of that. But then you a lot of times can't go back into the past because the data wasn't collected that you needed to analyze them. So in Splunk, you can go back and look at the unknown threats as well, and fraud detection is yet another. So a couple of these. One thing about Splunk is, although it can do a lot of these things, if you've got a SIEM or you've got software functionality out there that is doing a good job, you don't need to use Splunk to replace anything if you don't want to. You can pick up the data and you can do the pieces that augment what you're doing as opposed to replacing things. So when I go onto a site, if there's no pain point on malware, everything's working just fine with malware. I don't recommend replacing that. We'll just collect data and do the pieces of the puzzle that are not being hit by their current solution. So a lot of times, eventually, they come around to saying that we only want one tool, and Splunk is a natural fit for that in a lot of cases. That one tool will do a lot of things. Another thing about Splunk I add is that it just deals with data. It is, I like to say, hardware agnostic, vendor agnostic. It doesn't care if it's a Cisco router or someone else. It doesn't care if it's it's just data. And so a lot of your SIEMs have restrictions to where they work really well if your shop is dedicated to one vendor, and it works great that way. However, many shops are a mix of hardware, and it gets to be problematic because now you've got different silos of data depending on what vendor you're at, and you can't cross-pollinate or cross-correlate the searches between the two. It gets kind of problematic to try to manage that number of software. So a lot of times Splunk will be used as eventually to reduce the tool set that you have and to be able to put everything in one spot. I'll get off my soapbox there. Core Splunk. So the lab dealt with Core Splunk, just did a search for fail star, and you looked over a particular source type, and you just looked at the top IPs. That's Core Splunk. All of your applications, including enterprise security, are built on top of Core Splunk features. So there's nothing in enterprise security that you couldn't do yourself. However, there's a lot of effort that went into enterprise security, and the correlation searches are reasonably complex. So one of the problems you have when you have disparate log files, different sources coming in for data, is this log file has an IP, and this other log file has an IP, or syslog data, or however you want to think about it, has IPs. Are those IPs related? Is it a source IP? Is it a destination IP? This has an ID. Is that ID related to a different ID in another log file? Unless you're an expert on all the different log files and are able to put them all together and know what pieces match with others, it's very difficult to create some of these correlation searches. So the enterprise security product does provide quite a bit of value on that front to be able to correlate those log files and put information together across different platforms, across different hardware types and different sources. So, but all the features there, honestly, are part of Core Splunk. And if you drill down deep enough in any of your apps, you're actually going to end up in Core Splunk anyway. And so it's kind of good to know your way around the Core Splunk world. So a lot of people will actually rely on Core Splunk. Enterprise security does have all these correlation searches. They're great. But if it doesn't have the exact search you want, you can write your own in Core Splunk and have it alert and have it display, build your own dashboard to be exactly what you want it to be. Enterprise security, you can also customize a lot of dashboards as well, so I'm not going to say that you can't do some of that there. We'll take a look at that again towards the end here. The bullet point here is Splunk app for enterprise security is amazing, but it's not always necessary. So it's one of those for-fee apps for Splunk. So it's not a free app. Most of your apps are free, but enterprise security is a pricing model, depending, of course, on your license size. So the cost is dependent on how much you're indexing as well. So I can't give you exactly what it costs. Core Splunk features, what everything's built on, is search. That makes sense. Correlation of various pieces of data using transactions and things of that nature. Creating alerts to send out notifications. Those alerts can do various things. I have a slide of that coming up. Reports are just saved searches, so you can save and schedule the searches to happen periodically and to be able to visualize and dashboard things. Like I say, Splunk for enterprise security has a very good set of those type of things set out, but you can develop your own if you want. And if you want to, if you have the app for enterprise security, you can also do your own dashboards on the side in Core Splunk as well. So you can augment what enterprise security has with your own custom dashboard of exactly what you want to see as well. So it's very flexible. Splunk has done a very good job of making applications to where they are extendable. So you can extend the interface, you can call scripts, you can send, you can actually augment the search language. You can, if you really want to do your own GUI programming, you can take a dashboard and you can change it into HTML and JavaScript, and you have full control over the dashboard of everything it does. So if you have the technical expertise to write your own stuff, you can augment things and customize it. There's just all sorts of hooks to do that. So it's a lot of fun as a developer to have those hooks and to be able to build your own stuff in there. You also have the REST API, where if you don't want to use the Splunk GUI at all, you can write in Java and call it programmatical. So various ways you can do it. One of the features I mentioned before is the alerting function of Splunk. It's pretty fundamental thing that you need. But once you find a search that produces a report that shows you that there was a problem, you probably want to take a look at that search and say, hey, let's schedule that search to go every 10 minutes, every day. It depends on how important it is or how invasive or how big the search is. But you can schedule it and say, whenever this happens again, send me an email. That's the easiest thing to do. Out of the box, you get an email. You just send it off to a group, or you can send it off to individual email addresses, however you want to do it. But you also have the option of running a script against it. So you can write custom code to do whatever you want in something like a shell script or Python or PowerShell, or depending on what your platform is. And it could do anything like, enter a ticket in a workflow system to say, hey, this needs looked at. Or you can actually take corrective actions if you want to programmatically write something that blocks a firewall. I always like a human in the loop. It always scares me to do that automatically, but there are some cases where, if you get hit by a firewall, or your firewall gets hit by a single IP for, tens of thousands of hits per second, you might want to automate that. So there's a lot of things you can do with the alerts. This is kind of a hard dialogue to read because it's small, but you can schedule it. This particular one is scheduled to go off every hour, starting at 15 past the hour. I'd say this is a GUI interface. On this screen, there's another interface you can go to put it on a cron schedule if you're familiar with how to use cron. So it's much more flexible than this is. The number of results down here says is greater than 0 in this case. Maybe it's something like 503 server errors that every application has a certain number of 503s that are not really a problem. It's kind of a known running rate of 503s. It doesn't really have a user impact. So you say, well, I usually get 20 of these an hour, and that's fine. But if it's greater than 20, then I want an alert sent out. So you can set up something like that. You can say if it rises by X%. You can say if it falls by X%. If it has, you can set a hard threshold of over 500. However you want. You can set this up. They're very flexible on that front. So set up your alerts. And so basically what you're doing is as you diagnose problems in your system, you are building up a library of security functions, security searches that you can then reference in the future and are able to persist in Splunk, which is a great thing because when people in the security industry move on to a different position, this actually provides some sort of knowledge transfer. These are the things that they found important, and they're artifacts left behind that the next person can pick up and work with, as opposed to having the knowledge walk out the door with the engineer that went with it. So it's just another benefit of using something like Splunk to develop it this way. All right, so security controls, 20 critical security controls. We as a company, GTRI, will go out and do security audits on various things, and almost always the results come back from security audits that have the 4 critical controls, top controls are not met. And so the best thing you can do, even before you call a company like GTRI to do a security audit, make sure these work, because these are very simple to understand, but they're also very hard to implement. The first critical control is an inventory of authorized and unauthorized devices. If you don't have that inventory, you don't know who is supposed to attach and who's not supposed to attach. How do you know if it's the right person or the wrong person? There's some things there. And if you have that type of information, you can augment Splunk with that and say, you can say these are the IPs that attach that are not authorized. Somehow they got through. So you can use that control, the data that's generated from that control, to augment Splunk. Same thing with software. That's kind of a malware type of feel to it. Like I say, these are pretty obvious things, but almost everybody is lacking in it. Configurations for hardware and server controls on mobile devices, laptop workstations, and servers. And then looking at continuous vulnerability assessment and remediation. If you're pulling all that data into Splunk, you can do a lot of real-time alerting and get a lot of information for exactly what needs to be done to keep your systems secure. So Splunk is a very powerful platform for searching and correlating data. However, there's one challenge that Splunk had in its early days, and they have solved it, but the administrators of Splunk, of your Splunk environment, need to ensure that your data kind of conforms to what's called the Common Information Models. Sometimes they spell it out CIM, which gets confusing because some people call it TIM, some people call it SIEM, which then is SIEM issues. And so anyway, I will call it the Common Information Model. Basically, it's just a schema that says if you're talking about a network traffic, all of your source IP addresses should be extracted or pulled out of the data, the Splunk were pulled out of the data, should be extracted as src_IP. That way, if all your data sources are configured correctly to use the Common Information Model, then you can correlate more easily between various things. Because now you know I can look for the source IP for either my Apache logs and my firewall logs, and it will pull up all that data it'll be labeled the same thing. So that's what the Common Information Model is designed to do, to allow the data to be shared across applications and across different what they call source types, different log file formats, and to be able to pull that up and do correlations. So it's very important that that is done correctly in order to do a lot of your correlation searches. So Splunk does have a schema on the fly. What that means is it does pull out, it does extract these fields each time you do a search. And so once you've collected the data, even if it was labeled wrong in the past, you can fix that data and it will pull it up correctly in the future. So it's mainly an admin function, but I wanted to mention that because it's important to be able to do the correlation searches. Even if you're using enterprise security, if things are not using the Common Information Model for their fields, it won't find them correctly. Now, I'd say there's a lot of software, they're called technology add-ons, that pull data in, that do it correctly. They're bundled with enterprise security, so most of the stuff it pulls in, it will pull in correctly. But if you pull in additional information, this is a good thing to know about. So in this case, firewall vendor A calls the source IP SRC, while vendor B calls it source_IP. So we kind of need a common vocabulary. So there's the Common Information Model. Here is a definition of it. This is off of, I do believe this is off of the Splunk Splexicon is what they call it, a little lexicon for Splunk. And a link to all of the tables is down at the bottom of the slide. So if you want to go out to that link, you can go see what all of the different Common Information Model values are. In this case, there's different fields for things like network traffic, for webs, for access combines, things for updates, file updates. So different naming conventions basically for the fields. Next slide shows actually an example of the network traffic one. So this one would say there's a field name called action that is either allowed, blocked, dropped, or unknown. Not every piece of network data will have an action field in it, but those that do should conform to this. So it's bytes, bytes in, bytes out, channel, destination. So those are all different ways of looking at, of naming your data in a consistent manner so that it can be used by all the applications that are developed out there. All right, that just allows correlation searches to work better. All right, so we had an engineer working at a security booth. Actually, I think he was working the Splunk booth, actually, at a security workshop. And there was a CSO for Colorado. One of the featured speakers actually had this incredible application that they put together for doing security. It did all sorts of very complex and interesting things. And when he was done talking, he came and dropped by the enterprise security booth and said, "Hey, what is this Splunk for enterprise security?" So he'd done all this amazing stuff in Splunk, in core Splunk, without using Splunk for enterprise security. So I don't want to dismiss Splunk for enterprise security because there's a lot of good stuff in there. But if you're an expert and know your data very well, you can build your own correlation searches and build your own applications in Splunk that do precisely what you want and look at exactly the angles you are wanting to look at. So solely using core Splunk, even though he was an expert in security and a very good Splunk application developer to put those together, it was just kind of an interesting take. So let me show you a little bit about some of the things you can do with Core Splunk. I'm going to actually drop into the application itself. So I'm just going to go over to the search and reporting app. So this is the login page. You've probably already been here, I assume. I'm going to go over to searching and reporting over here. And I'm going to just take a look at some of our data real quick. And I'm going to say not over all time, because that will take too long. So let's go over 60 minutes of data. And I'm going to put in, look for where a tag equals, if I type this right, vulnerability, was vulnerability. So I happen to know in my data that we have various events out there, and some of the events are tagged as things that are a vulnerability message. Let me make this a little bigger. That's the wrong way. You actually see it if you have a smaller monitor. And of course, when I make it that big, it pops up in the autocomplete or the help, and it's too big for the screen. Let me just shut that down. In fact, let me go ahead and say turn auto open to off so that it doesn't do that in the future. When I make it this big, it makes a little bit of a problem to look at. So all of these are events. This is all data that's associated with a vulnerability, and so that grabs them all together. But I also want to see which ones are the high vulnerabilities, and this is all about knowing your data. So you look over here and you have a bunch of things that are getting pulled out as far as from all of these events. So what I really want to look at is I want to look at the high vulnerability ones, and I do believe there's one down here, if I can find it, a severity ID. So I'm going to say I want to know the ones with severity ID of 5. So I'm going to click on that. That's the highest severity. I happen to know that the severity ID that's what it means, and that 5 is the highest as opposed to the lowest. So these are all of the highest priority, highest vulnerabilities that the system has. And so these are all you see in here, it says severity ID equals 5. And so these are the high severity problems coming in. So then, but these are also on systems that are having known vulnerability. So so this basically will give us, if you look at the destination of all of these, gives us a destination IP of a bunch of highly vulnerable systems. So right off the bat, you say, well, these we should probably look into and see what's going on with these particular ones. We can take this, and then we can look at the events that have been tagged as an attack. So what I want to do is I want to take this set of IP addresses as a result of this. So let me just do this. Type it to a destination IP. So this is going to take it out of kind of an event view and put it into a table. There it comes. So these are I only have 7 in this case. 7 destination IPs that have a Sub 5 vulnerability associated with them. So these are systems we know are particularly vulnerable. So we're going to take that list of things, and using another Splunk syntax, I'm going to say tag equals attack. So certain events have been flagged, been tagged as an attack, and I wanted to use the results of the IPs returned by this one to say, hey, which ones of these are involved in an attack? So the question then is, so the tag, let's see what did I put in there wrong? Tag equals attack search. Oh, that's what it is. Missed my search command in there. So it's going to take this as a sub-search, go through, and figure that out. It takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to actually flip over to one I've done it before. Well, there you go. Didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take. So these are all of the attacks against machines I know that are vulnerable. And so this particular list of destination IPs, like again, they're alphabetical. You'd think I wouldn't have a problem. Destination IP. These particular machines have a set 5 vulnerability, and they have had an attack against them as defined by our software. So in this case, we're looking at Juniper IDPs. That's one of our sources coming in. And so you can see that although it's not particularly pretty, it doesn't have a lot of charts and graphs and things, that we're able to use core Splunk to say, hey, this is a particular problem. We've got these machines that have a particularly bad vulnerability, and they've been involved in an attack. So we need to go check these and try to figure out how to remediate those and if they need remediation. So just from a Splunk standpoint, just searching your data using core Splunk, you can build up dashboards with things like this. I could build a chart of this, and then let's see, I again put these again into a table. Table of destination dest IP. There, go through that again. But then once we have the table here, which is, I think it's got 3 values in it. It's got more than that. Got several of them. There's a lot of repeats. I can dedupe those. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I can do, let's do this. Stats count by destination IP. If you know the search language, you can go through and you can build various tables. And so once this is done, we'll have a table that says each IP and how many times it was attacked. So this is the count, and this is the vulnerable ones. And then we may want to take that and say, yeah, I don't want a line chart of that. I want a pie chart of that. And throw it on a dashboard and say, hey, these are the vulnerable IPs, and these are the biggest ones are probably the most important. So maybe I want, instead of that, column chart. So we can look at the ones that are most important. So you can build up things that way. But you have to have the data in your system, and you have to build the searches to do it. So just wanted to show you that, just a little bit of a live action on how you can build some of those things up. Time check, 12:04. Okay, we're going to add to the search security. This is my favorite tagline, by the way. No offense to anybody in Canada, but because you can't always blame Canada. Canada is just such a happy, benign country that seems like nothing can go wrong with it. So it's kind of fun poking fun a little bit on that. All right, so we're going to use the next lab. I'm going to actually go over and stop sharing my screen again and head back. So this is where we were at last time. Let me go down and go to the next page or two. Lab 2. So this is about a 10-minute lab or so. So it's at 5 after the hour, so we'll go to a quarter after the hour, and we'll let you work on these steps for the lab, and you can play around with the system just a little bit. Then we'll come back and we'll look a little more at the enterprise security itself, as opposed to just core Splunk. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes or so. All right, there, 10 minutes is about up. I don't know if you were able to complete all of those charts or not, but there's quite a bit of things you're putting in there. A couple of pie charts, a couple of another line chart usually as far as that goes. So let's see, I do have a couple people had questions. If you can go ahead and if you have a question, go ahead and hit Taylor up. That'd be helpful, because I've got a bunch of things. I have 2 people with questions as far as that goes. Let me figure out. To see one person has their hand raised. I'm gonna defer that to Taylor. So if you could send a chat to Taylor out there and ask you a question, I will kind of move on, because we're kind of pressed for time in this particular webinar. Or if you want to hang out afterwards, I will be here as well, and I can chat with you after we're all done with the presentation. I'll stick around afterwards specifically for that type of question. I'm going to go ahead and move on. And then let's see. So I need to share my screen. Where was I at? There we go. Share my screen. One. I always get a little paranoid, make sure people can hear me, because I have been known in the past to actually do 5 to 10 minutes of lecture on mute. So it looked like I was good to go. So I'm going to assume that I'm doing all right.
You're good on my end, at least. Let's put it that way.
Okay. I had one person had the comment, is sound up yet? And it's like, okay. And they were at 12:01, so someone's having a problem connecting. Anyway, good. Thanks, Taylor, for your feedback there. You guys have been so incredibly quiet in general that I was a bit paranoid, so I went on out and I'll show you this. It's kind of a fun little fact of how real-time Splunk actually is. You can see kind of the load on our server. I'm just kind of monitoring the different student accounts and the different things that they've been doing. So Splunk is real time. You're able to look at it immediately, and just a little plug on how dynamic it is, and that you can use Splunk to kind of monitor what's going on with Splunk itself. So that's kind of fun. All right, go back to my slides. There's Lab 2, and we're going to move on and look at what is a SIEM, SIEM, a Security Information and Event Manager System. I'm not going to read this back to you, but basically it's you guys are probably well aware of what a SIEM is, and Splunk has not traditionally been developed as a SIEM. Splunk is looking at big data and able to correlate different events across different log files and things, which can be used for security. And so because it is such well suited for that type of thing, to be able to handle the large volumes of data, Splunk went ahead and developed the enterprise security application. And the enterprise security application is a SIEM when it comes down to it. And so the question is, since Splunk was not developed for just right out of the box, it was more of a log analysis type tool, or a text analysis, big data analysis tool. How good does it do in that, play in that field? And we'll show in just a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. We have a Gartner Quadrant, which tracks different security products, and we'll see that the Splunk Enterprise for Security plays very well in that space. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So I've talked about some of these, so we're going to whip through them pretty quickly. Limitations of existing SIEMs. Limits to view of security threats. A lot of them are not as good at dealing with very large volume data, and so although they collect all the data, it takes forever to search it. So that's one of the issues, one of the differentiators. They distill the information into a certain number of categories and put it into a database. I'm painting this with a very broad brush. I'm not saying that every single one of them does it this way. I'm saying this is the general approach. So I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes that does a better job with their SIEM data. But this has been kind of the industry problem with it. Inflexible searching, in some cases. I talked about the speed scale. Things get too big, they start getting a terabyte of data, and some of them just tip over as far as that goes. And a lot of them are very difficult to manage and deploy. An implementation of a SIEM can sometimes take months to put together, whereas the typical engagement to get something up and running with Splunk is a 2-week engagement to get your data sources in and to get things talking. So I'm not saying that the whole thing is solved in that amount of time, but it is a lot faster time to market than it would be with a traditional SIEM, at least both traditionally. Again, the platform is platform agnostic, or it's hardware agnostic, vendor agnostic. Splunk just wants data, so it doesn't care who created the data. So it doesn't have to deal with a vendor, particular vendor only. So the idea from Splunk, we talked about this earlier, is to bring all of your data in and look at it, and then you're able to correlate over it and do all your searches. So what this graphic is looking at. Here's my Gartner SIEM Magic Quadrant. You can see that this is actually using Splunk as you might not be able to see, it's kind of small. But Splunk actually starts out right here, or in the lower left, in 2011. Then in 2012, it moves up into the upper left. 2013, it moved into the upper echelon in the upper right. And IBM, HP, and in this case, McAfee are in the same space. The 2014 version of it has it right here, so you know it's still playing in the same space as those four. So according to Gartner as well, and I don't necessarily think that this is the end all of any analysis of a particular SIEM tool, but it does show that it's been trending better, and it's up there with the best solutions as far as Gartner is concerned. So it does have some buy-in from the industry. There's industry different awards that have been given to it. 2015s aren't out, but it got the best SIEM solution in 2014. So it's a non-trivial. It's not a toy. It's a real tool. Same thing in 2013. A couple things in 12 as well. Like I said, 2015 is not out yet, but it's been. I checked yesterday. I updated this slide yesterday. It's a finalist for fraud protection, best SIEM, and best enterprise security tool. So it's in there with everything else, and is currently being lauded as one of the industry leading tools for this type of thing. So for my bang for the buck, what I like about it is it's so customizable and flexible. You can make it do exactly what you want it to. It takes a little bit of expertise sometimes to customize a screen, but you can make it do precisely what you want it to do. We've talked about a bunch of these on the way through. Splunk differentiators, the single product, that makes it a little easier to deal with instead of dealing with multiple security products. It is only software, it goes on commodity hardware, so that's a plus or minus. Some people like an appliance, but there are vendors that are able to supply a Splunk appliance and maintain it. So but Splunk itself does not do the appliance, does not do the hardware. Relative quick deployment, we just talked about that. It can look at any data, so it's any text data that comes through, any machine-generated text data. It's able to handle all of the raw data. It keeps the data in its raw state so that you can go back and look at it as well in the past if you need to do a more forensic analysis, whereas a SIEM tool a lot of times has distilled that data down into something we can manage a little better, and the original data isn't there. It's built for our big architecture, big data. It's very flexible in what you can build. That open APIs, SDKs is very extensible. So and then another side note is once you have your data in there for security, I think you'll find that the data is important to other aspects of your business as well. As far as even operational data, you can see as your firewall load balanced correctly, you can look at all the things coming across that way. As your network has your network load, your CPU, you can monitor your different infrastructure, but you also have business case. I bet you have business type data embedded in there, especially if you have web log files. You can look through there and say, hey, how many people are if you have a shopping cart example, everyone likes a shopping cart example, but how many people are abandoning their shopping cart and where are they doing it at? That information is all there, and you don't have to buy another tool for it. You just build a different dashboard. It's just got a different view. So that's my sales pitch for the reuse of the data. Once you have the data, it can be used in any way for any audience that you want to use it for. So you can possibly get other people. So for the security guys, you can possibly get other people to pay for it because they might be able to use it too. So I think the budgeting is usually the problem on the security side. So you leverage the data use as a budgeting tool. All right. Having said that, it is about 25 after, so we're going to spend pretty much the rest of the lecture time just doing a tour of the Splunk app for enterprise security. So I'm just going to jump back over to my browser over here, where I've got things. I'm going to go back to I'll go back to the home page so you can kind of get context from there as it pulls that up. And then I am going to go over and go to the enterprise security. And we'll just take a look at this data. This is the screen that pops up to begin with. Things are a bit crowded on my machine right now because I've made the screen so large. Usually you can see a lot more. So I'm not going to make it smaller, but in this case, we're scrolling up the bottom. So you have a lot of different categories up here to look at. The place that you typically start at is the security posture screen, which is the one that you either get to the link up here, or you can get to the link down here. Same. This kind of gives you an overview of what's going on the system. So the first thing that I want to do while it's populated already, but before we talk about the screen itself, is a couple of definitions. We have the definition of a notable event, and we have a correlation search. So a notable event is actually, let's start the other way. A correlation search is a search that runs across your data, across a lot of the data sources that comes in. So it's going to pick up different pieces, and it's going to look for potential security problems. When it finds a particular, what is a potential security problem, it's going to create what's called a notable event. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually a problem. That they try to steer away from the biased term of a incident. So it's not really an incident. You have to go kind of look at it. So they're kind of walking that line of saying this is a notable event. You may need to go in and qualify it. So notable event is something as a result of the correlation search, and it's something that bears more investigation. So having said that, we've got the first bar of information here has a bunch of categories for notable events. It's got the number of events it's found and what it was compared to yesterday. Since I just spun the server up recently, it doesn't have any data for yesterday, so there's 2K more than there were yesterday, because yesterday there was 0. So that's why it's actually set up. Has all these. The 2K matches 2K. All these match, because it's looking at data that was correlated from yesterday, and there is no data yesterday because this is just spun up. So this is looking for the notable events associated with access, notable events associated with endpoint, networks, identity, audits, and threats. This list is customizable. You can go up to edit, and if you were to say add one, you can see there's a list of, I think I counted 65 of these different categories that you can add different indicators up there for notable events. So there's a bunch. If the category isn't there that you like, you can create another. You can use another category. So I'll close that. So those are the notable events as detected in our data. Notable events by urgency. So it's each of the notable events has an urgency associated with it. That mapping can be modified by you, can be customized. So it's got its own idea of what's a big an important event, but if you don't agree with that, you can change that. I can show you where that's one of the places that can be changed here in a minute. So it has different over time values. Then we have a chart that shows the notable events over time, and then we have the top notable events, excessive failed logins. So this is where, by the way, you start drilling down into the data a little too closely, and it's like, well, how come all these IPs are equally distributed? Well, they're randomly selected and populating them via our data generators. So if you look too closely on some of this stuff, again, you'll see that it does show the signs of being data gens. But the top notable events. So that's basically gives you the view of this particular screen. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because we were talking about the actual correlation searches. So if I go over to the configure, I'm used to it being on this side because my screen is usually bigger and it doesn't scroll. Configure, and I look under incident management, and I look under over here over correlation searches. We can take a look at what the 43, I think it is, correlation searches that are already there by default. By the way, you see the new button up here. You can create your own correlation searches as well. So, but we'll just take a look at a particular correlation search here. Let's just take this one: inactive account activity detected. All right, so we drill into that. This is the title of it. It's in the access domain. If I didn't want it to be in the access domain, I could choose a different domain. So I could put this notable event in another category if I wanted to. So all of this is customizable by you. If you want the search, this is what it's going to do. If you want the search to be different, then you can go out and change the search to do whatever you want to. Now, this is a little bit deceptive in the sense that these little backticks, if I can get it to my screen, there it goes, backtick there to backtick there, mean it's a macro that will get expanded. So the search is actually more complex than this. There's got 3 macros that are defined there that will get expanded overall. But the key is that you can modify this if you didn't like it and you wanted to do something different. When it's going to get kicked off, this is actually using your cron schedule, 55 past the hour, I think, is what that would be. So it'll fire off every hour. Different things. Here's one place you can set the severity. So right now, this is a low severity event. You can change it to whatever you want it to be. Customize it however you want. The owners, what happens when you drill down into it, the search that happens, lots of stuff here. If you wanted to, you could schedule this as an alert that would send you an email. If I did that, it would give me the email address that needs to go out, a couple things, including the results in the email. I can make it a RSS feed, various things we can do there. And then the other thing is you can customize it and to run a script. And that script can do anything in the shell that the Splunk process has available to it. So if you have, so it'll actually kick off that script using the same user as what Splunk is running at. So that's one of my pet peeves is don't run Splunk as root, because any script you run will run as root as well, and that can be a security problem, which is kind of an interesting irony when you're dealing with enterprise security. But anyway, it can do a lot of things. It can call a Java program. It can query a database. It can do whatever you can write code to do. Any Python code or any Java code, anything you want to run. I would point you a little bit to the community in that you don't necessarily have to create all the scripts yourself. The community actually has some scripts out there that are available that you'll have to customize probably, because your IP addresses will be different, your passwords will be different, different things will need modifying. But you don't necessarily have to start from scratch through writing your own script. So that's kind of a quick look at a correlation search. You can see how easy it is to modify it, and of course you can create a new one as well. So I'm going to go back to our security posture screen, back kind of at the starting point here. 33 after. Keep track of the time. We got 30 minutes, or 25 minutes, basically. So how would you use this tool? So in this case, the screen is in general very interactive. So you click on a lot of things, and you can actually drill down into it. So what I want to do is, so a lot of these categories up here, and you can see they have subcategories underneath them, and some of the subcategories have categories. You can click on them directly, or you can drill down into them. So I'm going to drill down into them. So I'm going to into one of them. So I'm going to click on the notable events by urgency here, and that will land me into the incident review page. Again, that's still just the incident review tab here, but it pre-populates it with the urgency of critical, and you can do additional filtering if you want. Right now it's looking over a 24-hour window, and it's running down here. You can see that it pulled up all of the critical urgencies that are in that list. So that's basically a drill down into what built that particular graph. This is a real-time search. You can see that it just continues to run on the side. So in order to get the view details over here, in order to be viewable, and I'll click on it here and show you. Search is still running. Please finalize in order to display event details. Okay. Now you go up to this button over here, which is the finalize button, and that'll allow us to pause to finalize the search at where it's at, and we can get into some of the details. So the first thing I want to point out is there is a little bit of workflow involved with this. If you want to use it, I can click on this and say edit the selected events, and I can say the status of this particular notable event is, let's say, in progress. The urgency, it's a little bit, the urgency right now is critical. It's because it was brought up in the critical thing. If I were to change it to something else, it would no longer match the critical filter for this page and would disappear from here. So I'm not going to change it. I'm going to leave it at critical. But I can give it to an owner. I'm going to give it to D. Harold here. And I could put a comment that says, could you look into this here? and update it, and so we can kind of manage that just a little bit. It's not particularly robust, but it is enough to kind of keep a little bit of tabs on what is exactly going on. In this case, I'm going to, again, it kicked off the search again. I'm going to finalize it up here. You can see now this particular one is in progress, and you can see that it's assigned to a particular owner. So that's a little bit of workflow is involved with it. Okay, so the next step we can look into is to look at a little bit of the details we can get into here. Let's look at the high volume traffic on top. So I'm going to click on the View Details link on the side, and this is a lot of information of what caused this event to fire and what has been pulled out and associated with this particular notable event. Here's a correlation search that actually fired, that flagged this as being notable. So there are some cases where you can teach them to be better, like the personally identifiable information will flag a lot of your 16-digit numbers as possible credit card numbers. Well, if you have session IDs and things, they can have 16 contiguous numbers, and so sometimes you have to teach it a little bit as to what is a real event or not, so you do modify the correlation search to do that. You can look at all the activity for this notable event. That actually pops up another window, another tab over here. And so it will now show me, basically in core Splunk, I don't know why this is coming up all the time. I'm not sure why that one came up as empty, but we're just going to ignore that right now. It has to do with who I'm logged in as, I think. Contributing events over here. Let's see if I have better luck with that one. There it comes. So these are the events that pulled together that contributed to that, to getting flagged. It's going to look for proxy as a macro. It's going to expand into something, but it's going to look for bytes out greater than 0 from a particular source and destination. So, so you can drill down into some of those and understand that. So in this case, we've got a large volume of traffic was observed from this to this. So it's a notable event. So, you know, is it a problem? Maybe, but maybe not. We actually have to kind of look into it a little better. So it has some of this information. There's a bytes out. There's a lot of bytes there. We're going to look at all these individual triangles down here have different completions, different things, actions that you can take. So in this case, if I wanted to go over to a different service, this is actually going to go out to a different site, domain dossier, and say, well, who is this IP address? Couldn't find a domain name associated with it, but it is described Albanian mobile communications, which may be a perfectly valid thing for you to be going out to, or it may not be. And so that's to just kind of give you a tool, gives you some information to kind of look at. And some of these are more helpful than others, like with Dallas, you can Google Dallas. Well, that's not going to probably help you much, but some of them are definitely more helpful than others. Other things in this destination, you can actually look it up under malware search. You can do an NS lookup, ping it. There's lots of things down here you can take a look at and drill down into a little bit. I'm not going to go into all of those because there's just a ton of places you could go. Another one that has a little different example is, oops, I don't want this one. Hide details. This one right here, let me look at the details that Mr. Harold is going to look at apparently. And underneath this particular machine, note that it's got kind of an internal source IP. And so one of the things we can do is we can navigate to the asset investigator. And let me go back and look at up here at the top and note that under event investigations, there is an asset that is the link it's going to go to, but it's going to go there and pre-populate it. So a lot of these are shortcuts in order to get to different places in the Enterprise for Security. So if I go over to there, I'll just show you the, oops, it's the wrong, there it is, Asset Investigator. think the lab actually has you going through this IP as well in here. So what this is this is looking at this particular machine, this particular server, or if it's a server or a firewall or whatever it is, and it says what different pieces of information do I have in all of my security information that's associated with it. This particular server has a lot of authentications going in along it. Has a couple of changes at various times been made to it. It was not listed in any threats, not on a threat list like Norse threat list, Dark Horse, I think it is. It's been involved with things that look like intrusion detection system has flagged it a couple of times, and malware has flagged it a couple of times. And so you can see the number of events you can see, get a picture of what this particular piece of hardware is experiencing from a security standpoint all across the different categories. So that's one, and we can actually click on a couple of these. Let's click on this one, and you can see if my screen were wider. See over here, you can see action modified endpoint protection. The user was Bob Roberts that did it. So there's a little bit of information that you can do, and you can jump out and do an extra search over here and drill down more if you wanted to in core Splunk. Over here it says 45 events. It's got a IDS attack that was flagged for, the different destination things. And then over here, this one is malware attack as well. Signature was adware hotbar. So in this case, and the user associated with it. So this is looking at a particular machine and the different cross-section of how it affects security. You have that particular angle to it, but you could also go up into investigators and look at the identities. You can click on, again, these are all interconnected. If I put up here a user, and the one that comes up kind of built into this demo a little bit is Hacksaw. Has a name for it, a couple of aliases for it. So we look at different authentication events and that it's had. Come back over here, and we say there were 7 failures. So if you can look at it, you can take a cross-section of per each machine, if you want, per piece of hardware, or per identity. And so you can look across either way to understand what's going on your system. I'm running out of time. I always run out of time. Okay, so what else can we look at? We look at the event investigator a little bit, and the identity investigator. Let's take a look real quick because it's kind of an interesting feature at the predictive analysis. So in predictive analysis, it comes up with this screen. It doesn't auto-populate. You have to select things. So over here, I'm going to take some network traffic. And then after the network traffic, I'm going to look at the DNS traffic once it gets there. DNS traffic, and then the count, and I'm going to say no attributes, and we'll just submit that and let that run. So this runs a search that has actual values, and given its track record, what it would predict the values to be over time. So you can see in here that, and one thing about Splunk in general is the buckets at the beginning and the buckets at the end are not necessarily all full, so you have things that trail off on both sides. So I'm not really concerned about that. But you can see, given the pattern of activity, it anticipates that these values would be in this range between the upper dotted line and the lower dotted line, kind of in the shaded portion. So this is what it actually was. This is its algorithm was predicting it to be. And these are the actual values. So in this particular window, we stayed very much in what we predicted, although it looks like we dropped out of it over here. And we get a report of every time it drops out. So it drops out probably there, and then of course it's got an endpoint dropouts as well. So this basically flags us when the count for this particular, for network traffic, for the DNS traffic, is out of a particular range. And then you can alert given the exceptions to the rule. So I'm not going to go into the different ways of predicting values. Splunk has 3 different algorithms, depending on if it's a cyclical algorithm, should be a steady state algorithm, blah blah blah, of which you can use. It gets kind of sophisticated at that point. But this is the one out of the box, and it's kind of an interesting functionality that you have as well. So there's predictive analysis in there. We can actually look under advanced threat and look at the threat list activity. So this would looking at various threat lists. Those are maintained resources out on the web that some are free, some need it, some actually have a fee associated with them. North Dark List has a fee associated with it. So the last 24 hours is IP list, log main, and spyware, as far as those go, and the threats there, and the ones that were flagged by various things, and the different, again, another table representing some of the same things. Threat list description. So you can go through and play with that a little bit, but that actually inquires of external resources that are maintained by other companies, other parties, in order to make those make that data available. I'm not going to go much more into that. Let's see, what else? Let's take HTTP user agent analysis. So these are the different users user agents that are on the machine. In this particular, the user agent is what in most cases, what browser did you hook up with, or what was the signature on that? And so here are the different user agent details. So this is Mozilla. All of these end up being Mozilla on this case. But you can see the chart up here. This is important because a lot of people can use a particular user agent to tunnel information out of your environment. And if we were to spend more time and drill in deeper, the data here actually is using the user agent shockwave flash to tunnel out information. So in this case, that's higher than we expect it to be, and we could drill down and kind of understand that. I'm going to go ahead and stop at this point. We've got about 15 minutes or so. There's a lot of different places we can play in here, but I want to give you time to actually play with the lab a little bit and move on, and then we'll you can always play with this after we're done with the boot camp or later on tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing here. So the way I'm going to do this, I think, actually maybe I shouldn't. Let me see. Check something real quick. See how many slides I actually have after that slide. Virtually nothing. So, let me show you those real quick, one by one. So we were at the app Splunk app for enterprise security demo screen. After that, basically we have summary information. We kind of talked about for Splunk, Cisco Security Suite, Splunk Enterprise Security. I haven't pointed this out, but if you haven't used, if you're looking to use Splunk and you don't have it in-house, an interesting place to go is to Tech Validate. Under Splunk, it's a third-party company that has different use cases, and a lot of them are security use cases. But if you need validation that Splunk was a good tool or a bad tool, or solve problems, or you need to publish to management that justify a budget or something, that's a good place to go and look up a various use case and see how much return on investment they got. So that's a good place to go. If you want to know more about using Splunk with Cisco ICE, you can go to that link as well. So another link that's there gets us to the last lab, and then I have a thank you slide is all I have after that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little bit of a, well, tell you what, I will let you work on the lab for about 5 or 6 minutes, and we'll do a little bit of wrap up. But I will stay on the line afterwards, and we can, where you can, if people have questions, and we can chat about things in general. So that would put us up to lab 3, right here, enterprise security. And so you guys can go ahead and jump onto that lab and do that. What I think I will do is I'll have us go ahead and wrap up, because some people like to drop at this point and do the lab on their own, or because that will be the last of our slides. So I'd like to reiterate, back to my marketing hat, we're GTRI, and we hope that this is useful to you and helpful to you. We're more than happy to help you out if you need licensing. Being a premier Splunk partner, we get pretty good rates on licensing. We do professional services. We also sell the hardware associated with network devices. Happy to help you there. We also will do Splunk education, whether it be certified Splunk education or get familiar with Splunk type education for various levels. So we do all of that, and we'd love to help you if you would need that help. So Taylor, is there anything else that you can think of that I missed in kind of a wrap-up sense?
On my end, no. Everything seemed covered over here. I'm going to actually stay on the line with you as well while, if people have more questions and whatnot, but I think you covered everything there.
Thanks. I tried. I just want to make sure, validate. So what the plan of action then would be, you feel free to drop if you want at this point. We're happy to have you. We're glad you were able to join. We're also going to stay on the line. I'll be on the line for half an hour afterwards, and so we can chat, and you can send me email as well. Let me send out my email address on the chat. All participants, my email is the following. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me there, and if you have any questions afterwards. Again, the lab will be up probably about 9 o'clock my time. I'm actually in Denver, Colorado, so that puts me at Mountain Standard Time, so that would put it at about 9 would be 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and it would be 8 o'clock Pacific. So the server will be up in that time frame. So hope this was helpful, and as soon as you chat, if you have questions. Thank you for attending.